Hello and welcome to this Spook and Play podcast. I am your host, Spooky Henry, and today we'll be talking about Dead Space Remake and Horror Pictures Anthology, The Devil in Me. We also have spooky news, delisted or dead games, the Xbox Partner Showcase, a spooky half Pokemon, half human child, and the scariest of all, layoffs. But for real, hey everybody, and welcome to the Plug and Play podcast. I will be your host of the evening, Henry, and thought it'd be fun to have a little bit of a spooky, Halloween-y themed episode. You can't really do that with like a weekly ongoing video game show, but we're doing the best we can here. Just a quick forward, I will be out of country for the next few weeks, so this will be, I will not be uploading. We've maintained an ongoing every 2 week schedule here at the Plug and Play podcast since inception, and that will unfortunately have to come to an end, and we'll be skipping next week. I'll hopefully be back the week after, or the next 2 weeks, but taking a little bit of a sabbatical there for, I'm taking a trip to Japan, the glorious Nippon. Really looking forward to that. Obviously, the land of weeb and games. I've always wanted to go to Japan and kind of see what I see in a lot of stuff like referenced in a bunch of video games I play, a lot of anime I watch. You know, it's kind of the pilgrimage, right, of every nerd when you get this deep into the sauce. But I think it'll be cool. I missed out on the Nintendo Museum tickets. If you didn't know, Nintendo opened up a museum in Uji, or Kyoto, Japan, and they even had a direct for it. It was honestly, it seemed a little over the top, but it would have been cool to be one of the first people to go, but like it's a lottery system. So if you didn't know, pretty much everything that's a ticket wise over in Japan is lottery based. And so that means it's unlike here in America where you basically wait in a line at the like 12:01 or 12 o'clock in 1 second, whatever the case is, and hope to God that you just got the tickets at that very moment and you beat out all the bots and stuff. In Japan, it's like, well, everybody can kind of put in as long as you want up until a certain period, and then you just kind of randomly get the tickets. And I think that definitely helps a lot in terms of, a lot of bots and stuff. I think it doesn't necessarily fix the problem, but I think it can certainly help it, because you can make multiple accounts and put in for these tickets, but they make it a little bit more difficult. Anyway, I did not get selected for those tickets. That was probably like the nerdiest, most video game related thing I was going to do. Obviously, I'm going to like Akihabara and stuff like that, but like, that was like strict. This is a video game thing, and I didn't get that. Apparently, tickets then like reopened at some point, but Nintendo didn't ever say that. It just like happened, and then people got them and were like, yeah, good luck. I don't think they're ever going to do that again. Like I lucked out, and it's like, okay, cool. Fun to know that that's how the system works, but it is what it is. I guess I'll also be going to Universal Studios Japan, and I'll be going to the Super Mario World. It's kind of anticlimactic because that's opening in America. It's already opened in America, technically, in Los Angeles. I'm closer to the Florida area, so like I would be closer to Universal Studios Orlando, which is about to get a Mario World. So I'm going to the oldest Mario World, not the newest one, and probably one where I can't understand anything, but it is what it is. I think it'll still be cool. There's a lot to look forward to. Very excited, but I've been very busy planning for the trip, getting everything situated. When you're out of town for a couple of weeks, it makes things a lot more difficult to get everything kind of situated and make sure everything's on track before you go. So that's why this episode's coming out a little bit late. That's why I'm not going to be here on the next typical upload schedule. So let's get into the actual video game stuff. Enough rambling about me. Who cares? We care about video games. on to the news. News topic number 1 is the spooky ghost game of LittleBigPlanet 3 being delisted, which kind of counts as it being dead and therefore a ghost. You could make the argument that LittleBigPlanet as a series was dead far before this, but I would not, because I like LittleBigPlanet. But let's get into the actual topic. So LittleBigPlanet 3 specifically, and all of its DLC, is going to be delisted. So in that case, completely removed from all avenues of purchase this month. So October 31st, you will no longer be able to purchase LittleBigPlanet or its DLC in any capacity, which is kind of crazy. You can still play it if you own a digital copy or a physical copy. DLC obviously no longer there. But, you know, we talked about it actually earlier this year on the podcast, but LittleBigPlanet's servers were shut down. Sony was hit with a lot of DDoS attacks on those servers for some reason. I guess people just don't like fun. And they just decided it was more trouble than it was worth. Shut it down, get rid of it, who cares? That was really depressing for me because, I mean, LittleBigPlanet is really known for its community content. It's really nothing without it, to be quite honest. Well, that's an exaggeration, as I'm about to get into, but, like, it's heavily centered around its community content. So if you don't have these community-based levels, then you're really missing out on what the bulk of the experience of LittleBigPlanet is. Now they're delisting it, so literally there's no way to play anything, specifically the single-player content. There was still single-player content associated with these games, and I actually played the crap out of the single-player content for these games, specifically the first game, back when it initially released. I had a PS3 pretty early on in the life cycle, and LittleBigPlanet was, I mean, like, if you don't remember the memes, you know, like, PS3 had no games. Like, LittleBigPlanet was one of the few games I had, and I really enjoyed it. Honestly, you know, kind of Stockholm Syndrome. Like, I just had to. It was the only option I had at the time to enjoy, so I did enjoy it. But I do think there's a lot of charm in LittleBigPlanet, and there's a lot of nostalgia there for me. So, like, this is one of the things, it's like, why do you even need to do this? Like, that's kind of where the real big question here is. It's like, well, you already shut down the servers. There is no community content to worry about or server costs to keep up. Why do you really need to delist this game? And it doesn't make any sense to me. It really does seem like just kind of a slap in the face to an already slap in the face of, like, kind of crippling this game. And now they're just like, well, yeah, you can't even play even the single player content if you wanted to. Again, it's a game preservation thing. It's like, well, obviously we know, like, these servers are going to get shut down. It's like, it is what it is. Like, every online game is kind of ephemeral in that way. It just kind of poof goes away at some point. Because you can't maintain the servers, and the community probably doesn't necessarily care about maintaining their own servers. So you just kind of have to deal with that inevitability. But when it comes to, like, a single player portion of the game, like, especially, like, it's a legit campaign. There's like it's probably like around a 10-hour campaign. You know, there's a sizable amount of content for something that's just being locked away forever and you can never play it again. Like, it's kind of scummy. Kind of scummy in just a preservation perspective. And I'm a big preservationist when it comes to games. So, like, I just don't see why they need to do that. I see a lot of talk around this issue. People saying LittleBigPlanet as a series, just the whole IP is dead because, you know, we have Media Molecule over here, been working on Dreams and probably the new IP for the last better part of a decade. And, you know, Sony doesn't necessarily, I mean, Sackboy used to be like basically the mascot for PlayStation during the PlayStation 3 era. And now they kind of have teetered away from that. They don't really want to focus on, you know, little old lovable family-friendly Sackboy anymore. They'd much rather kind of double down on these M-rated mature titles like God of War, Last of Us, Ghost of Tsushima, Horizon, you know, more adult-focused IP. So, and you know, it is what it is. But, you know, I guess let Nintendo have that whole cake and eat it. But I think it's a little exaggerated to say the IP is completely dead. We just had Sackboy's Big Adventure come out at the beginning of the console cycle. That was just a random kind of platformer. It was different than normal Big Planet platforming, but it was a 3D platformer made by, I believe, Sumo Digital, who made 3, if I remember correctly. And it was okay. It was not bad at all. Like I think I've heard several people say that game's actually pretty good. It's just a matter of if you played it. The game didn't sell very well, but it is a possibility that the IP lives on. Will it live on in the same way that it did initially on the PlayStation 3 lifecycle? Absolutely not. There's no way. I think Sony's completely done with this like user-created model after Dreams kind of flopped. And Media Molecule is really the only developer I can see tackling some kind of system like a user-generated content angle, and they're clearly focused on other stuff. They're not going back to it. So the IP itself, I don't know, man. I don't think it's dead. I think it's totally possible that it could come back anytime soon. Probably not, but like, could it come back? I think it's totally possible. But yeah, for now, it's dead. Very spooky. Maybe it will come back as a zombie, which is also spooky. Anyway, enough of that. This is I can put no Halloween spin on this at all. This is the Xbox Partner Showcase. Moving on to the Xbox Partner Showcase. So it's been kind of a slow week, kind of a slow couple of weeks for video game news. There's been a couple of little drips and drops here and there, but like, been kind of milking it. Let's be real. I feel really bad for people who have to do this on like a regular basis or a daily basis, and like that's their job, because this year has been super packed. It's been very, very eventful. I've been very happy to have a podcast this year. This podcast, we're doing our best, people. Xbox Partner Showcase is here because it is a big deal for an Xbox Partner Showcase to happen. They did show some cool stuff, but like, let's be real. This showcase kind of felt like Xbox felt they needed to talk about stuff, and they really didn't have a lot they could talk about. So it's like, okay, I guess it was all right. So we're going to go through everything on it. Again, thank goodness I'm the only one here. I'm just going to skip over stuff or go over it real quick, give a nice little just kind of synopsis of what it is. If I don't have much to say, we move on. But started off the showcase kind of strong with Alan Wake 2, the Lake House DLC. We got a release date for it. It comes out like this week. It is pretty much in time with Halloween. I will not be able to play it at release, but apparently I think I saw reviews. The first review drop for this, it's got a 4 out of 10 for this DLC, which is insanely low. I expect that to be much higher by the time all reviews drop. But like, who knows what they did? They could have gone way up their own anus with this story. I mean, Alan Wake kind of already was, but like, that's kind of what made it genius to me in a way. But the Lake House is a more horror-focused DLC. It's funny to say that because the previous DLC I loved. Actually, I will be able to play this day one. I won't be because I won't be in the country, but I will be able to play this as soon as I get back because I have the digital deluxe version of the game because I decided to buy it because I thought the first DLC package looked really, really good, and I ended up really, really loving it. It was a great amount of fun, but it was very comedically focused. And that's why, like, it's weird to see people be like, well, Alan Wake, this is like Alan Wake 2, the Lake House. It's like really a horror-focused DLC. It's Alan Wake trying to be a horror game. It's like, well, Alan Wake 2 already kind of tried to do that. Like if you played the campaign, Alan Wake 2 really kind of has this weird kind of balance of being this weird, kooky game and also trying to be like Resident Evil. And it's like, okay, how did you make that work out? We have a horror scene in one instance, keeps you on your toes, resource management, the whole nine. And then we have a musical number, like talking about Alan Wake's backstory at the next scene. It's like, that's why it was one of my top 3 games of last year. It does some super surreal stuff, and it makes it work, even though it doesn't seem like it should. But this is like, people are saying, oh, this is a horror DLC. It's like, okay, well, kind of, I can just see them just trying to do more of the horror stuff that they did in the single-player campaign, or the base campaign, and that's just what this is. It's also supposed to be kind of the crossover point between Alan Wake 2 and Control. That could be dicey. There was technically Alan Wake DLC in Control that kind of tied the universe together. It was really the first cementing thing that they were like, yes, we are definitely trying to make a like kind of a universe of Remedy games here with Alan Wake and Control. And I actually did not play it, but I went back and watched a cutscene of it. It is so, oh man, it is such a letdown. It is like a nothing burger of DLC. It hardly references or does anything with Alan Wake. It does, but like it is not worth playing. It's not worth replaying the game. It's not worth honestly booting up the game to even see it, unless you're just really that curious. Just watch a 5-minute YouTube clip of everything Alan Wake does in the Control DLC, and you're good. But anyway, maybe this could be as big of a letdown. I don't anticipate it being, because they said it was the bigger of the two packages. Admittedly, the last DLC was only like 2 hours, if that. So like this has to be longer. But I'm still looking forward to playing it regardless. I'm an Alan Wake 2 fan for sure, and I am definitely going to be checking it out. Next, that was a long time to talk about Alan Wake DLC. Chronos: The New Dawn. So this is one of the big surprises, I'd say. There weren't many like huge announcements that I was like, oh dang, okay, cool. This was one that definitely made me raise an eyebrow and go like, okay, I see what we're doing here. This is a new IP, and it looked pretty interesting, very surreal. There was like a dude in like a diving suit, kind of like playing a chess game against an old woman, and then like whenever they made moves, it would cut to another instance of him like fighting enemies. Looked kind of interesting. It's another IP. What makes it interesting is not necessarily what was going on in the trailer. I mean, sure, that is part of it. But what makes it really interesting is the fact that it's from Bloober Team, which is the people who made The Medium, Layers of Fear, and of course, the most talked about horror game this year, Silent Hill 2 Remake, which got really, really good reviews. I mean, if you followed this podcast at all, you really have to follow the podcast. You can just look at the dang internet. People have been really thinking that game was going to suck. And it looked like it was going to suck. All press for it looked really mediocre. Even Bloober Team came out and was like, these trailers don't represent anything that the final product is. And then this game came out. It's got like an 87 or something on Metacritic. It's like very high, especially considering Bloober Team's track record of having like the most mediocre horror games ever. I think this has finally made people look at Bloober Team and kind of be like, well, they can make something good. And I'm like, the kind of joke people are throwing around, but it seems like they're kind of seriously saying it, is like, well, maybe Bloober Team can only make remakes of games that were already good. And I'm like, I don't know. Can we even think about what we're saying there for a second? Like, Bloober Team made an already good game good. Like, I think we just had a good game, and Bloober Team just had a blueprint for what a good game was and made it. Like, I think it's very different when they're trying to make something themselves, which is evident with something like The Medium, because that was basically their Silent Hill game that they made from the ground up. And people were like, wouldn't it be cool if they made a Silent Hill game? But it definitely wasn't anything like this, because this game kind of sucks. And it's like, like, where are we at with Bloober Team? Okay? Like, they make one good game that has basically been made for them. Like, let's be real. And now apparently they're like a GOAT studio. Like, let's calm down a little bit. I am certainly still interested in this, because the Silent Hill 2 remake was very good. But to say that I'm sitting here like, dude, this is one of my this is gonna be a great game. Heck no. Like, this is high likelihood to be mid as frick, 100%. Like, there's too much going against Bloober Team right now that this has got to be a good game. Another thing, short aside, Bloober Team's director came out and actually said that they were done making bad games, in a statement that kind of blew up. over the week. Again, like this has been a slow week, so like of course that made headlines, but like obviously nobody would admit to making horrible games. But it's funny because essentially Bloober Team has always kind of been attacked for having bad games or at least mediocre ones. I've played a lot of Bloober Team's games actually, and I think they're all like mind-numbingly boring and not great. Again, I haven't played Silent Hill 2 Remake yet, but like again, every other Bloober Team game I've played has been like that. And you know, like clearly this is him saying we used to make games that we, you know, we've evolved as a studio. You know, we don't make games like that anymore. I think we've learned and we've improved. Like that's essentially what he's saying. But of course, like people took it and ran with it. So just a fun aside there. But anyways, Chronos: The New Dawn. We'll be keeping an eye on it. This could legit be Bloober Team's chance at showing that they can do something. That they are not the studio that everybody expects them to be, or has kind of stereotyped them to be. And I think they've earned that reputation, to be fair. But, like, you know, we'll see. I'll be keeping an eye on it. Next, they showed off Like a Dragon, Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii. This was a gameplay trailer. I think it was the first gameplay trailer we've had. It was a gameplay reveal of it. That's right. And dang, it actually impressed me. So, a little bit of backstory to that statement is I've played several Yakuza games, and I loved the first one I played. The first one I played was actually 4, which I definitely don't recommend as a jumping off point. Then I played 5. I thought that one was okay. And then I played 0. I thought that one, I got really sick of the series after 0. And like that's kind of the place that everybody says like, oh, you need to start playing at 0 because it's canonically like the earliest point in the game or in the series, you know, like lore wise. And it's like, okay, but all the games are the frickin' same. Like this studio puts out a game or more, I will note, or more a year. And that just leads to these games being incredibly samey, incredibly similar, and I think not worthy of the praise that they're currently getting. I think that this series just happened to blow up recently. It's been around for a really long time, obviously. And you know, since we're up to Yakuza whatever 7 or 8 now, with a bunch of spin-off games like Hawaii, like Pirate in Hawaii, you know, like it's a game series that like just hit a 90 on Metacritic this year, and I'm like, I haven't played any of the Like a Dragon games, which are their turn-based, you know, kind of newer Yakuza games, but I guarantee you they are not a 90. Not after all the work I've seen from the previous games the developers have made. I'm not gonna say that like these games are bad, because they're not. Like I said, I loved 4, but like every other game they make is so similar that I'm like, I don't want to have anything to do with this. Like, it just doesn't look fun because it's the exact same gosh darn thing I did for like 40 to 60 hours in like a year ago. You know, it's like I don't want to play the same game again. Give me some time to breathe. So like I really need like every once in a while I kind of need like a breather from Yakuza, because it's like this is just too similar. This trailer blew me away because I was like, this is another freaking Yakuza game. Okay, I get it. The pirate game play looks really good. Like, it looks really good. Like, this actually looks like it will. Here's the thing. Here's my theory, my pet theory, because I, again, know these developers. This is likely like a mini game. You know, you're sailing around. Like, that is a minor part. It's like the real estate management simulator in, you know, like the last couple of games. It is something that you can probably sink 100 hours into. But it is a side portion of the game that is probably deeper than it needs to be, but like not deep enough to make a whole game about it, you know, kind of deal. And, you know, I could be wrong, and maybe that's how this game is completely structured 100%. Maybe it is. Maybe that's everything about it. That's the whole like story and everything is this kind of gameplay. But I just don't trust this developer enough. And I think, you know, now we have this narrative in the gaming industry that this developer is like a god tier developer that's making like gold every time that they turn around every year. And again, I think that's ridiculous. But like, I'm definitely way more interested in this game now after seeing the gameplay reveal than I was previous to it. I just assumed it was going to be another stereotypical Yakuza game, and it's not. So I'm definitely keeping an eye on it now. I still don't think I'll play it. I'd rather actually play like a Dragon game first, proper, before I played this game, which is a spinoff. I just don't see it being, as meaningful in the overall story or universe as, it's clearly a throwaway game for just fun, kicks and giggles, which is totally cool. But that's not what I go to Yakuza for. I go to for like melodramatic, cool story moments and characters and stuff like that. So that's what I go to for, at least. So anyway, this actually kind of blew me away. Good on them. It seems like they're continuing to do some cool stuff. So again, I don't hate them, but looks pretty cool. Next we have Blind Fire. This is another hero shooter that honestly, like, okay, so here's the gimmick. You need a gimmick nowadays if you have another hero shooter coming out. You need the gimmick. This gimmick is lights. Specifically, like, everything's dark, and in order to know where to shoot people, you have to use, like, neon lights. You have to start lighting things up in order to see and shoot and kill. So, if you watch the trailer, it's kind of almost like, I would almost kind of compare it, I'm not going to say paintball, but like essentially you shoot things around in order or get perspectives on things so you can see enemies and actually be able to shoot them. It seems pretty gimmicky. I don't know how long this gimmick will last people. It could be something that brings people in momentarily. They play a couple of rounds and they bail. Because it's just like, okay, like there's not really a lot of skill here. It's just kind of like, it is what it is, and then you move on. I don't know. We've seen hero shooters come and go over the years. I feel like clearly there's something here I'm missing, because yeah, hero shooters are oversaturated, like there's no doubt. But then you have a game like Valorant come out, which is a hero shooter, and it's like, okay, that game did really, really well. And people are like, well, Overwatch is dead. And then Blizzard continues to make content for that game, and it continues to make a lot of money, so that can't be right. And I'm like, okay, like clearly there are hero shooters that are doing well. Clearly, like, we are not the representative of the whole here. People still want to play this stuff. So maybe this will be a success. I don't foresee that at all, to be quite honest, but we'll see. Next up was Subnautica 2. I played a little bit of Subnautica 1. This was a bit of a surprise. I mean, I have to assume we all knew that this game was in development. They also made kind of a spin-off game a while back. So this is kind of an expansion, really. But this is the sequel to that. Will have 4-player co-op, which I think is a really cool inclusion there. I think that'll make it a lot of fun. Subnautica is a really well-regarded, like, what do you even call them? I guess survival game. Yeah, it's definitely a survival game. You essentially build like a base in like an underwater base, and dive deeper into the ocean to find different things. And it is. I never beat Subnautica, and I want to go back to it, but it is probably the only survival game that I've ever been like, okay, I actually want to continue playing this, because it has a story mode to it. Like, I don't really love survival games because they're pretty aimless. It's just like you make your own objective, and then you just decide when to stop. And I really prefer structure in my games, and telling me like begin, middle, end, and having a payoff for all of that. And Subnautica actually gave me that. And I was like, oh, this could actually be like the through line that I need to continue playing these, like, or continue through the gameplay. So I really do intend to go back to it, but I know a lot of people are excited for this. It's a very well regarded game. So here's to Subnautica 2. Looking forward to that. Next was Eden's Zero. This is an action game based on an anime that I'm very surprised got a international release, to be frank. This is from the same creator of the guy who did Fairy Tail. That's his most well-known work. He's done actually several animes that have been at least fairly successful or well-known. Eden Zero is kind of the newest one of those. Fairy Tail is definitely his biggest success, though. And I've watched about 30 or so episodes of Fairy Tail. It's aight. Very bog standard shonen, but it has its fans for sure. And I can see that. I mean, like, you really just got to be in the right place at the right time to be getting into any kind of shonen, to be frank. At least any kind of generic-y shonen, and that's kind of what Fairy Tail is. And then Eden Zero is Fairy Tail in space. Like I watched the first episode or two of Eden Zero, and it is Fairy Tail in space. It is like why anybody would give a frick about it. It is so beyond me. I can't even tell you. It's so generic, and it feels so copy and paste when we're looking at Fairy Tail as a whole, or his work as a whole. And yeah, I can't imagine this being very successful. The Fairy Tail game is also just another enigma. There is a Fairy Tail game. There's actually two. They just released a sequel recently, and that's like one of those things is like if you're making a video game based on a show, you need to start from the beginning. Like I think that's like of the story in the show. Like I think that's like obvious, but like Fairy Tail like was like, nah, dude, we're starting at like episode like 150. You know, like if you don't care about this show, like this is not your getting in point. And I'm like, that is not smart. You know, like you want to start at the beginning because then you have hardcore fans who are going to play it anyway, and then you also give it as a jumping on point for anybody who may be interested, and then you potentially get new fans. But you know, One Piece has had several games like that too, where they're just like, yeah, we're just gonna start at episode like 800, and it's just like, what the frick? Why? Like you are really narrowing down your audience when you do that, and you're gonna scare away a lot of people. But not only that, but the Fairy Tail game was a turn-based JRPG. And I'm like, you made a shonen game, a turn-based game, and admittedly there's a One Piece game that's also turn-based, but like, I don't know, that's not what I want. As a shonen fan, that is not what I'm thinking about at all. So Eden Zero is a straightforward action game. Honestly, kind of reminded me of like, what is that frickin' series? Oh man, brain fart. Dynasty Warrior. There we go. Dynasty Warrior. It seemed like a lot of big sweeping moves, dealing with a lot of grunt enemies. Definitely not to the extent of Dynasty Warriors, but that's just kind of what it kind of reminded me of, just off the base little bit of gameplay we got. But this is a weird one. This is Xbox showing off like, yeah, we have relationships with Japanese developers. Isn't that cool? And it's like, I mean, no, because no one's gonna really care about this. Like, this was a game that I think the developers were just happy anybody cared about it in the West. So, yeah, I don't have any high hopes for this at all. This will easily be in the 70s if you're lucky, and no one will buy it. So that's cool. Next up was Phasmophobia. It is finally coming to consoles on Halloween, just in time for Halloween. Spooky. There you go. There's the tie-in. There's the Halloween tie-in for this story. But yeah, Phasmophobia, apparently this was delayed for a while because their studios caught fire. The Phasmophobia developer studios caught fire and pretty much, well, I mean, understandably put them way back on the timeline. So, you know, Phasmophobia, a very popular Steam game. You've probably seen some Let's Player play it or something like that with a big YouTuber face screaming in the thumbnail or something like that. It's always been interesting to me. I'd still need friends to play it with. That's the thing about Phasmophobia, is it is a co-op focused game. So maybe the single player for consoles is added, or maybe there's a mode in single player for the consoles that I'm not aware of. But for the most part, you need friends to play, and I just don't have friends. So sorry. So you know, for me, but it's you know, it's gonna be cool for those who want to play it. I think it looks like a really fun game. So cool. Next is Animal Well, coming to console, or coming to Xbox specifically. This is very big success critically. I would assume commercially maybe less so, but like I still think Steam, it probably sold really well. I've seen a lot of reviews for it on Steam. I can't imagine it was like it was a PlayStation Extra game, so maybe that was a big deal. A lot of people picked it up, but like, I mean, they made their money probably lump sum up front from that. But Animal Well coming to Xbox, this was a big get. I mean, kind of. It's hard to say this was a big get because it's like, well, I mean, how many people are really like, oh, frick, I'm so locked in the Xbox ecosystem, I refuse. You know, like I can't play anything outside of it, and I was really hoping to play Animal Well. Like, I just don't see how big, like, the clamoring audience for this game on Xbox was. But I guarantee you, if it's at a Direct or if it's at a partner showcase, Xbox probably paid a little bit of money to have it ported to Xbox. But, you know, that's just my thoughts, my conspiracy theory, you know, tinfoil hat. But yeah, Animal Well, a lot of people I know really like it. I thought it was a very well designed game, very smartly designed. Never saw the super cool extra stuff that made people say it was like amazing, but like I definitely think it's a good game, no matter how you slice it. Like, it just is. Next, Mouse, PI for Hire. This is an interesting one. Apparently, this has been around for a bit, but this is the first time I've really seen a good bit of it. This is Steamboat Willie art inspired first-person shooter where you're kind of playing like a 1950s PI, believe it or not, by the title. And yeah, it looks like a standard. Honestly, it looks like a standard freaking first-person shooter that you'd see in kind of like a Doom-esque clone. Classic Doom, but this is, you know, got a really cool art style. Like, let's be real, this game is being carried by its art style. It's a great art style. It's like Cuphead, you know, it's going to stand out, it's going to look cool, and it's going to be what people are playing it for. I would just hope the gameplay is good, and it looks good. Is it going to be great? I highly doubt that, but, you know, again, people are there for the art style. Next is The Legend of Babu. Probably the funnest name of the showcase. This was probably the easily like least interesting looking game at the showcase for me. This game looked budget, models looked iffy, and it looked super dated. Super dated. Oh my gosh. When they showed the guy jumping around on platforms that looked like I straight up was like, dang, are we back to like Prince of Persia for the Xbox 360 over here? Remember? I can't remember. 06 maybe? I can't remember the year that game came out, but like, you know, Uncharted level, the original Uncharted level of platforming where you're like, you have the ledges that are like coated yellow on the side of a mountain and you're just kind of shimmying from one to the other. Like, you know, I'm like, oh my gosh, like this game looks like it should have come out 2 generations ago. And yeah, I think honestly very underwhelmed by The Legend of Babu, and I'll just say it, you know, one more time just because that's probably the most fun I had watching the trailer. Next, we have Eternal Strands. Really didn't get much off of this one. Kind of came and went, kind of forgot about it almost immediately. Really the big bullet point here in doing research is this is from former Assassin's Creed and Dragon Age talent. So it has people behind it. It has talent behind it. It has former people behind it, and I think that's kind of what they're leaning on here. I mean, I don't know enough about it to say. This just looks like another video game. So maybe when we see more, I'll be able to say, oh yeah, sure, that looks good. But like right now, I don't have enough. I'm willing to continue. Probably has talked way too much about a lot of these games already. So continuing on, we had probably what was one of the bigger announcements in terms of like the hardcore community. FBC Firebreak. So this is Remedy's new game. It is in the Control universe, using a lot of kind of Control's weaponry and kind of mythos and enemies that we're kind of used to seeing or kind of reminiscent of it. But it is specifically, what makes it interesting is it's a multiplayer game. I believe a three-player co-op PvE game. So that's cool. So here's the thing, is me being the Debbie Downer here. Let's be real. I really enjoyed Alan Wake 2. I haven't loved any other of Remedy's games. I do think they're all good. I don't love them. I think what really makes Remedy's games go from good to great is like the concept behind them, the story, kind of the writing, like that kind of the creative aspect is really what makes them great. Remedy's gameplay, in terms of something like the original Alan Wake or Control, or the other two Remedy games that I've played recently, at least, is like it's good. Like it's really solid. It's not great. There's definitely some things, that definitely other games in the same genres that play better or work better in certain ways, but they're all good. Like I certainly can't fault that. And like I said, what makes them great is the concepts, the writing, the story. That's what made Alan Wake 2 one of my top 3 games of last year, right behind freaking Baldur's Gate and Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. So like, this is a game that's not going to have that at all, I would think, or at least a very minor component of it. So you're going to be focusing heavily on the fact that this is all gameplay. Like this is all going to be gameplay, and it's also Remedy's first multiplayer game. I'm sorry, I just see this game being good, not great, and like, maybe getting low 80s on Metacritic and maybe high 70s, and like people are going to be, it's not going to be enough to maintain what you really want this game to be, which is a big multiplayer deal. So yeah, I'd need to see more. A lot of people are like, oh yeah, we love everything Remedy does now, so that's cool. And I'm like, yeah, I get it. You can definitely be excited for this, but I'm going in with tempered expectations. I'm also just not like a big PvE multiplayer guy. I just don't play a lot of those games. So like, it is what it is, but I do think it's interesting, Remedy trying to expand out and what they're comfortable developing, and again, like I said, their gameplay is normally pretty good, so like it has potential to be good. Certainly, I don't anticipate it being great. Next was Mistfall Hunter, which we have these presentations. You gotta have a Souls-like. Every presentation in the past year has had at least 1 or 3. Maybe 5, so Mistfall Hunter's another one. Here's the thing. It's got an actual interesting twist. It is a PvPvE game, extraction focus. There's an extraction focus to this. So, think The Division, think Escape from Tarkov. It's trying to do that but with a Souls-like game, and I think that's cool. Apparently, extraction games are a big deal nowadays. People really, really like them. Tarkov is a big deal, and it doesn't even have like an accessible real version of it. Like you have to download it directly from the website and set up their own launcher and stuff. So just for that game. So like, and it's still very successful. So, like clearly people are trying to get in on this extraction genre. And I think that's, putting it in as Souls-like, it seems, I don't know how that will translate, but at least it's an interesting twist. At most of these Souls-like games, I'm just like, yeah, it's another Souls-like. At least this one I can say, it's the Souls-like with a twist. Okay, moving on is Wheel World, formerly known as Ghost Bike. They showed off gameplay of it, at least a very extensive look at the gameplay for the first time. This is a game that was initially released, or kind of slated for a 2024 release, Annapurna game, and, I was like, yeah, okay, cool. It has an interesting art style. That was pretty much like all I had for this game. And then they changed the name from Ghost Bike to Wheel World. Yeah, sure. I like alliteration. I'm not going to fault it. But the gameplay that was shown off here actually kind of impressed me. When I was initially shown the initial trailer, I was like, what is this game even going to be? Like, is it a racing game? Like, I don't really like racing games. Like, is it like, all I can really see it being is like a racing game, and I don't really care about racing. I'm not a racing game guy, and there's definitely going to be racing components to this. I mean, that was shown off in the gameplay, but it looks like there's a really big emphasis on like, going around an open world and like finding stuff and exploring places. And I'm like, oh, this actually looks kind of cool. This actually looks kind of fun. And yeah, I'm actually kind of looking forward to this game now. And like, I was not expecting to at all. So good on Wheel World. Looking forward to it in 2025. Next is Wu Chang Fallen Feathers. This was their closer. The big closer. And what is it? Not only is it another Souls-like, it is another Chinese Souls-like, which seems to be like ridiculously prominent now. Like I don't know how we keep doing this. I don't know how they just keep, because these games have had to been in development for years. So like it's not like they all just like looked at one of these things and was just like, well, crank it out. We got 6 months before we're all hot on this trend. You know, like they have to have been developing this for like 3 to 5 years. So this has been a crazy amount of Chinese Souls-likes being released or being announced recently. And yeah, this one didn't do anything to really wow me. I mean, it looks good. I mean, like if you think a Demon Souls or a Dark Souls or whatever a Souls game looks good, a typical FromSoft proper game, I think this game has chops. The right art direction looks good. Bosses look cool. Combat looks interesting. Again, it's just so oversaturated now. It's just so oversaturated. You really have to do something big to stand out. You really do. You got to either be a perfect game or have something interesting to make you really stand apart, like having a freaking extraction game element to it. So yeah, not exactly a huge, big showstopper of a final announcement there. But overall, I mean, like this is like maybe like a D minus, a D plus, somewhere. We'll just go with D. This is a D. This is a hard and firm D for this particular showcase. There was definitely some new announcements, cool. Some gameplay that looked interesting, great. Some games that I cared about, absolutely. But there's definitely a lot of nothing burger announcements here. Animal Well, Phasmophobia, Alan Wake 2 DLC. I mean, like this is all stuff we already knew about or have had a long time to either play or whatever the case. Some really horrific looking stuff, like Eden Zero and Blind Fire and stuff like, or the Legend of Babu. I should say that again, the Legend of Babu. So it was a really mixed thing here overall. And I'd have to say, like, the things that were shown off that really kind of caught my eye, I'm like, that's cool. And that was, like, the furthest, like, I kind of got with that excitement is, like, that's cool. And then that immediately tapered down. So this is, like, a hard D for me. I really like Cam's Stud and Dud thing that he started for these conferences. What my favorite thing was, what my least favorite. I think it should be fairly obvious. We'll get the dud out of the way, but one more time for a good measure, the Legend of Babu was easily the worst looking thing at this particular showcase. I did not like it. I did not like the looks of it at all. Very dated, very not interested in the slightest here. The stud is probably a little bit harder for me. It's I respect Firebreak. I think it looks interesting. I think Wheel World really surprised me. I think Like a Dragon, Pirate in Yakuza, or Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii really surprised me. I'm looking forward to playing Alan Wake 2, the DLC, the most. And then probably the most interesting announcement overall was Chronos from Bloober Team. So, like I said, there's a lot here, but like for different reasons. I think it's kind of a cop-out to say Alan Wake 2's DLC was like my favorite thing, So overall, I'm going to give the inspired choice. I'm going to go with Wheel World. I am probably most interested out of all of these titles to play Wheel World. So, I would assume that's probably coming to Game Pass if they showed it off here, or it has a high likelihood. So I'll give it a shot for sure, 100%. But overall, pretty lackluster there. Next, on to the next spooky thing, the spookiest. Bandai Namco cancels games and lays off employees, and this is an interesting one. So layoffs, obviously the spookiest thing you can that is like, give me a horror movie about layoffs, that'll be a #1 box office hit. But Freddy Krueger step aside, we got layoffs, the real economic killer. But anyway, this one's an interesting one because technically Bandai Namco technically laid off 200 employees, and then they canceled a few games. They canceled a few games, specifically like Naruto and One Piece games, and they also had a Nintendo game that was under contract, and they canceled it as well. So I'll get to that in a second, the games that they canceled, but the initial thing here is the layoffs. That's the spooky thing, so we got to focus on that, is they technically didn't fire anyone. So it's very interesting hearing these or reading those headlines and then going into the article and it being like, oh, they didn't fire anybody at all, actually. So in Japan, and this is a very interesting talking point, I will be there in just a few days. But in Japan, there's it has some of the strongest labor laws in the world. So, and honestly, a lot of it, I don't even think it's a lot of labor laws per se. It's a lot of culture over there too. And essentially, there's a strong culture of like, we don't get rid of employees pretty much. So even when like an employee has kind of run their course and they like, let's say you're about to retire, a lot of companies will just give you a corner room with a window and they will basically just give you no frickin' work, or they will give you menial tasks that nobody really gives a frick about, and they will just wait for you to retire. Like, that is basically them saying, we will pay you to do nothing because you've been loyal to our company since, 1980s or whatever the case is. And, like, we just kind of want to reward you for your hard work by saying this is basically your resignation bonus. Like, you just get to sit in a room, but you are basically no longer a part of the company. We will just pay you. You're on the books, but like, you aren't actually working for us anymore. And that can be either, that can be like kind of an honor, kind of like a nice little send off, or it can be like an insult. Like, it really just depends on the situation. And in this case, they've kind of started getting a little bit more harsh with that situation. So they didn't fire anybody, but they did move 200 employees to resignation rooms. Which, very funny, like Bandai Namco actually commented on this because it made international news, and they were like, oh, we don't have a culture of doing this. Like, we have not fired anybody. We are honestly very nice people, and we have not done anything wrong. So what resignation rooms are is that you don't even get a nice little window to look out of and have sunshine. Like, it is just a walled off room, and they will either give you like menial tasks, or they will give you literally nothing at all. Like, they will just sit you in a room and tell you for 8 hours, just sit there. Like, we'll pay you, but your job is done here. Like, you will never be looked at again as like an equal to us. Pretty much, it's like you are a secondary citizen of the company at that point. And it is like basically dishonorable. Like, most people would rather quit than do that because they know like basically nobody wants them there. So like, they'd rather just quit. So pretty much immediately after they moved these employees to resignation rooms, 100 of them pretty much immediately resigned. Like, half of them were like, okay, I'm out. The other ones probably, maybe couldn't afford it in one way or another to like just immediately lose their job. So, like, they kind of stuck around maybe for the paycheck they needed to while they're looking for other work, possibly. I don't know. But, like, it was kind of an understood, like, you need to just frickin' leave. So, when 100 people just kind of walk out at the same time after they get moved to another job, and they're like, oh, well, no, we just kind of felt like we just kind of felt it was right. It was the right time. No, like, I think there's probably a little bit more to it. On top of that, it means these companies don't have to pay severance. I think it honestly is ultimately like a cultural thing. This has been around for a really long time. But, like, yeah, it's also like another thing was like, if they fired people, they'd have to pay a buttload in severance. So they don't do that. They just wait for people to quit, and then you don't have to pay them because they quit on their own accord. So that's kind of messed up. It's kind of ultra messed up, really, when you think about it. But, I guess they still have a job or something. Anyway, moving on to the games that they canceled. This I actually think is like a good move. Like, a lot of people were like, oh man, canceled games. I love Naruto and I love One Piece. I'm so sad that I won't be able to play these wonderful games. And Bandai Namco, I think, is looked at as kind of like this amazing publisher. You know, like you immediately think of them and you're like, the first thing you think of is like, ooh, Elden Ring. They published Elden Ring. And ooh, Tekken 8. Wasn't that a really good game? Tekken? You know, like you think of all these, like, they're really big flagship titles that are these massive sellers and, you know, like critically acclaimed, some of the pillars of the industry. You know, that's immediately what you think of. You don't think of freaking all the Sword Art Online games, and which I literally talked about last podcast and said they were all like the worst JRPGs I've ever played, and like the Jujutsu Kaisen game, which has a straight up like 30 on Metacritic right now. Like they basically publish a bunch of garbage anime schlock, which is like they basically just take IP from stuff and just like push it out into the wild without any care in the world. I think I've actually referenced this on a previous episode before, but like a majority of their games is complete schlock. And, you know, like maybe they still sell really well. I don't know. I don't know what they sell like, but like these games suck. Like they're just not good. So I'm interested to know what the Nintendo contract was. Could have been anything. Could have been just assisting with development of another game. It may not have been actually making one for them. You know, you never know. You don't know what team was on it either. Could have been a good team. Could have been a bad team. But like the Naruto and One Piece titles, like honestly, like I'm even like a Naruto and One Piece fan, and oh man, like I couldn't care less. Like there's no way that either one of those games or any. They said multiple Naruto and One Piece titles, so that implies that there were multiple Naruto games and multiple One Piece games in development. I have to imagine they were all going to be mediocre at best, and not worth your time. So I think it is honestly for the best that these games were canceled. Yeah, just put out more freaking Elden Rings and stuff. You know, I don't need your garbage One Piece, like, or give the freaking anime IPs to other people who care about them, who like want to make a decent game out of these IP that I care about. But anyway, so yeah, that's the spooky layoff story. Next, even spookier. This is quite possibly the spookiest. GameFreak was hacked. Oh my gosh. Via phishing attack. 2,000 employee names, emails, and phone numbers were all leaked. This is, I mean, not great, obviously. Another leak, another day, another leak, right? Another day, another hack. You know, always be safe around your email. Be wary for phishing scams, ladies and gentlemen. If you needed another PSA on that, I'm here for you. But no one cares about this. This is like, you know, I guess their phone number and their email, that kind of, and their names, that sucks. But like, I assume their names were not like necessarily super private. You could probably go on LinkedIn and find that. Their email, I guess that sucks. They're going to get a bunch of spam, you know, like websites going to their email addresses, and their phone numbers. Yeah, that definitely kind of sucks. That's easily the worst part. But like, you know, you can get another phone number. You're not locked into a phone number for your life. So it is, you know, it is what it is. It sucks, but it is what it is. What the real story here is GameFreak, if you didn't know, is the people behind Pokemon. They're one of the 3 companies that owns the Pokemon brand, and they're pretty much the ones responsible for making most of the games. They basically, a bunch of stuff was data mined from their servers, and so Pokemon unused concept art and lore was released unto the world. This people obviously went through this all and combed through it with a silver tooth comb, or a fine tooth comb, excuse me, and, you know, found all the weird stuff and stuff like that. Obviously, this is technically it's canon because it's from Game Freak, but they also never released it. So this is just stuff that they kind of had kicking around. And this made a lot of waves. Like, a lot of people were talking about it. Forbes reported on it. Like, people were freaking talking about this. And it's like a non-canon lore story. But what's really spooky, this is a Halloween episode still. What's really spooky is that a Typhologian which is the final form of a fire-based starter Pokemon from one of the earlier games. There is apparently a Pokemon. Oh my gosh. There's apparently a Pokemon lore story where he turns into a person and he marries and impregnates a human female, and they have a half Pokemon, half human freak baby, and the baby is mercilessly bullied for being a freak of nature, and then the dad of the girl kills the Typhlosion. And it's just kind of messed up, and it's just kind of weird that they had that as like part of the Pokemon lore in consideration, like at any point. And yeah, it went from, I mean, it's just kind of freaky. I mean, really, I mean, like that's I think the best thing you can ask for a Halloween episode. But people were like, okay, well, let's like give him some credit here. Technically, this is based off of a Japanese folklore story called The Faceless Woman. It has very similar themes, very similar, stuff happens throughout the story. A creature transforms into another being, which then falls in love with a human, and they kind of have like a little freaky baby, and stuff like that. So, it's derived from traditional folklore. But yeah, like, why do we need that? Like, why? Like, I feel like there's obviously a reason that it wasn't added in to the general Pokemon lore. Is probably they thought that through, like for 5 seconds, and they were like, just put it in the server somewhere and never talk about it again. So but here we are, talking about it a lot. A lot of people talking about it. So at least at the very least, it is a funny story that it was even considered, and just interesting in general. So I thought it was worth noting. I thought it was comical. Next, in our final piece of news, my favorite, another spooky studio shutdown. More people losing their jobs. That's right. Netflix actually shut down their AAA studio, Team Blue. So this team had a lot of high-profile talent from other huge studios. So most notably, we have Raf Grassetti. He was the art director of God of War, the newer God of War games from Santa Monica Studios, so a very, very well-respected studio there. Joseph Staten, which a very, very well-known, I even know the name Joseph Staten, and I don't care about Halo. He is the head of creative at Halo Infinite. He's been at Bungie for a very long time, and 343 for a very long time, and has stewarded that series for a long time, very well respected. And then Chaco Sani, who is an executive producer from Overwatch, so you got some ex-Blizzard talent over there too, for some again very well respected games. So all these dudes were laid off. Like, it's confirmed. Like, they all left their jobs to specifically start up and help develop games for this studio, and they've all been let go pretty much. That's been confirmed. I don't know how many people in general were let go, how many people were kind of shuffled around, but I think this is a clear sign that Netflix is like, yeah, we don't want anything to do with this whole AAA thing anymore. Like, this was their AAA studio, and it seems like they're really kind of taking a step back from that. And like it's, I mean, you look at it, like, let's really take a look at what Netflix has done. It's always been interesting to me because do you even know that Netflix makes games, like, or has games available on their platform? Like, right now, you listening right now, you can go on Netflix on your mobile phone. If you have Netflix downloaded on the app downloaded on your phone, you can play a bunch of mobile games, like, for free as part of your Netflix subscription. Like, very notable games. I mean, like Grand Theft Auto, like all the mobile Grand Theft Auto games are there for free. There's a lot of, like Dead Cells is one I remember being there. FTL is another one that's kind of a more niche one. But like, I mean, like, there's a lot. There's a lot. And it always blows my mind that nobody knows about that. And I think they just now started kind of pushing it a little bit more, from what I can see at least. but like I still don't think that the vast majority of people know that you can do that. And I don't play games on my phone very much, so like I'm not really the target demo. But like, I mean, they bought the Oxenfree developers. Like you can play the Oxenfree 1 and 2. Oxenfree 2 released day of for free on Netflix. Like when it came out with all the other platforms, it released for free there. I downloaded it on my phone. I just never got around to it because I don't play games on my phone. And I also was like thought Oxenfree was good, not great. So I didn't hear anything like massively awesome about Oxenfree 2. But anyway, it was very obvious that they were trying to make like a mobile game kind of Game Pass almost. And it clearly seems like they just thought that they could put a bunch of very successful people in a room together and they would just make games happen. And that just didn't materialize. Video games are clearly much harder than that. And even if you have really great talent over there that you're paying buku bucks, that does not mean that it's going to materialize. And yeah, it's apparently they were trying to make all this multi-plat. I had to think about it a little while. I was like, what are they even planning on doing that? Because like these games would have to be playable on phones. And we've talked about it on the podcast earlier this year, but like AAA gaming really nobody gives a frick about it on phones. Like Resident Evil 7 came out and sold literally like 2,000 copies or something, on mobile, like in total. So it's like nobody cares about AAA gaming on phones at all. So what does that even mean? And it's like, well, they probably were making a Oxenfree, AAA Oxenfree, something that can be played on your phone but has a AAA component to it. And I'm like, I just don't see that really being AAA. It seems like they almost wanted to make video games, like just like a God of War or a Last of Us or something like that, a Halo. Like that's what they wanted to make. And I'm like, how are you going to incorporate that onto your Netflix platform? That seems to be your goal, not to be just a video game publisher or a video game developer. Like that just seems silly. Like just do what you've been doing and get people to, maybe get a studio that makes mobile development and then put it on the phones like you're trying to do. I don't know. There is a path to success with this. It just is, Netflix is nowhere near mature enough in that aspect to really make it happen. And in terms of their video game space, and like if you, I don't know, I'm clearly stumbling over myself here because I'm just flabbergasted with how they thought this was going to work and how they thought it was going to materialize. And I mean, it's weird that this even kind of happened, and it's sad. But I think it's funny for me to think about where Netflix is headed as a video game company, because it has been trying to be a video game company for quite some time, and I think nobody even knows that, which is like such a weird problem for such a massively successful company. It's been very successful recently. Netflix continues to break expectations on subscribers every quarter, and I don't know how they're doing it because I don't know what the frick people are subscribing for. But like they're very successful. So it's like somebody up there had the idea and it just did not materialize for some reason. And I don't know. This was not a very coherent conversation about this, but I think it's interesting to just point out and kind of be like, what the frick is Netflix doing? Like, how is Netflix expecting this to work? What are they expecting to do with video games? Are they even going to continue along this path? And I don't know. But yeah. That's the end of the spooky news. Now on to the spooky game impressions. This is we're gonna start off with this. I'm just gonna drop that. Dead Space Remake. Dead Space Remake is the first game I'm gonna talk about. So I actually did think that this was like I didn't intentionally decide like this was gonna be a Halloween episode until I ended up playing 2 Halloween-y horror games, in between, planning for the trip and getting ready to go. Earlier this month, PlayStation Plus gave away Dead Space Remake for free to all PlayStation Basic tier level subscribers. I actually have Dead Space physically. I got it on Black Friday last year, and I even mentioned when Cam talked about it. Cam brought this up on one of our early episodes. I highly encourage you to go back and check it out. It's episode 8, I believe. It's Dead Space 2 Dead on Arrival, I know is the name of the title, because we also talked about the fact that Dead Space 2 Remake was completely canceled on that. The same episode that he ended up finishing the game was the same episode that Dead Space 2 Remake was confirmed not in development, that they decided it was not worth it. So, but anyway, I was like, yeah, totally. I'm totally going to get around to this because Dead Space is one of my favorite games. And this just made it so I didn't have to get up and put a disc in my console. And I was legit planning on playing it this month anyway, because it's like, well, this is the best time to play a spooky game is during freaking spooky season. So let's just do that. So I did, and I downloaded it so I didn't have to get up. And that's like the biggest benefit of being, like digital is you don't ever have to stand up and walk a few feet to your console and put in a disc. So I did that, and I really enjoyed my time with it. But like that's because this is a horror classic, and it's back, and it's better than ever, baby. So if you don't know anything about Dead Space, this is a game. It is a sci-fi horror game where you play as Isaac Clarke on the Ishimura, which is a mining vessel out in the middle of space. There's been a distress signal called, and it's up to Isaac and his crew to go check it out and discover what has been happening on this particular vessel. And you find out that there's some frickin' zombie aliens and like a crazy space cult, and they're wanting Isaac and his friends dead, and that's something you gotta not happen. You don't want that because that's bad. So, yeah, it's a survival horror game. This game is very similar to, I would easily compare it to Resident Evil 4. Like, and I mean that in almost every way possible. Like, I really think this is like the closest thing competitively to Resident Evil 4 in terms of quality. Like, I really love Dead Space. I consider Resident Evil 4 to be one of the greatest games of all time, and I put Dead Space up there in kind of a similar category, because it really does follow a lot of the same beats as Resident Evil 4, but it definitely is its own thing. So I played the original way back in the day on PlayStation 3, and it's a welcome excuse. This remake is a welcome excuse to revisit it, and there are definitely differences. But, like, it's been so long, I could not tell you what the heck they were. And it became very apparent to me that was the case when, like, I went back and, doing some extra research before talking about it. And I was like, oh, well, I'll just, check it out, like some side-by-side comparisons of the original and the new one, because I'm pretty sure the original looked just like the remake. And then I looked at it and I was like, oh, PS3 looked really bad. I didn't remember that. I just thought PS3 was like the best looking thing ever, because I think of PS3 games and I immediately think of Metal Gear Solid 4, which is still very good looking to this day, and like The Last of Us, which is still very good looking to this day. And it's like those are the two things I think of when I think of those of that generation, but like that's just not indicative of the whole at all. So like this game looks tremendously better. The game was originally, like, the original game was really well done in terms of its sound design and its lighting, and it really makes the game super spooky and atmospheric. And like this game nails it. It continues that pace up, or it continues that quality from the original, if not easily improves upon it. They have a couple of extra features in there also that are added on. So the peeling system, I believe they called it. So in the original game, like the big gameplay element that they try to emphasize is like you need to dismember enemies, cut off their arms, their legs, all that stuff. That's how you really do massive damage and you really take enemies out and like use that strategically. In this game, they have a peeling system. So the first game, you kind of just shot at the limbs and they just kind of fell off. In this, you shoot at a limb and like the skin will come off. And then you shoot at it again and the muscle will come off. And then you'll see bone. And then you'll be able to actually take off the limb. So like it adds like an extra little level of like fun and visceral, nature to the combat. And I really, I didn't know that until it was kind of pointed out. But like it's those little details that really do kind of add up in remakes like this and make it really go above and beyond what the original product was. And I really think that definitely shines when you really take a look to notice it. Another thing that was implemented was the AI director, or the horror director, I think is what they called it. So this is like essentially the game kind of keeps track of like how long it's been since you encountered enemies, stuff like that. And if it's been too long, if you've been running around in circles for too long, the game will just basically shove an enemy in your face. And I say that very derogatorily because, I didn't think it added anything. I couldn't have, if anything, it was annoying to me. I would be trying to backtrack or find resources or something like that. And just one enemy would just like freaking pop out of nowhere, out of a vent or something. And I'd be like, oh, well, let me stop what I'm doing and freaking fight this enemy, because like in a resource management game, like every hit counts, because like you don't just regenerate health, like you have to use health packs to get it back. So like it's like I'd have to stop what I was doing and then I could go back and research or continue to search areas. I did not particularly care for the AI horror director. It never really did anything to me that I really thought was very worthwhile. So it's there. It didn't necessarily, I don't think it overall detracted from anything, but like, I really probably would have preferred it just not be there so I could focus on my exploring a little bit more. And then there were some changes. I think the biggest and most noticeable changes to me where there were some changes to the story. People were freaking out about it like they had made some massive changes to the story. They did not make massive changes to the story at all. There is one big twist at the end of the game that they do change significantly, but the end result of the twist is the exact freaking same. So like I don't think it's that big of a deal. Like I saw that happen and I was like, oh, why did you need to do that? Like at the end of the game, I was like, oh, I definitely know that's different than what happened in the original. I vividly remember that moment because it was a big twist. And I'm like, I just don't understand why you necessarily needed to do that. Like that just seems like you really just kind of made it a little bit more convoluted and almost a little bit less impactful by doing that. But like, I mean, I guess we still get to the same place by doing that. The other big thing is they make Isaac talk. So Isaac in the first game is a silent protagonist, fully silent. And in the remake, he talks a lot, like a lot. And you can see that either, like I can see like a hardcore Dead Space fan being like, really, I can't even see a hardcore Dead Space fan being like, that's bad. Because in Dead Space, there's honestly a lot of Dead Space games. People only think about it as 1, 2, and 3, but like there's like several other spin-off games, and like there's even like an anime, like a movie. Like there's like EA really tried to make Dead Space a freaking thing. Anyway, like he talks in 2 and 3. He's a very vocal protagonist in the second and third Dead Space games, and the original he never talks though. So it was, like even a hardcore Dead Space fan would probably be like, well, he talks in the other games, so it's not that big of a deal. But like, and this was something that I'll get into Cam's talking points. I went back and re-listened to the conversation that I had with Cam on Dead Space. Cam, if you're listening, shout out, buddy. But I wanted to be sure because I was like looking forward to having this conversation with him. He's not here, obviously, so I was like, we'll have like kind of a time and space conversation, a little bit distanced, but I went back and listened to some of his points, and one of his main points was like, I just can't see the original being like I can't foresee the original having him be silent. I think it would honestly be awkward. And honestly, I don't disagree with this. And this was like something that I genuinely think that they handled the addition of Isaac talking like pretty well. It really doesn't alter very much. And I was, honestly, like Isaac comes across as pretty confident most of the time, but like I was expecting that to make me be like, well, now I feel more confident, and therefore, like this game isn't scary anymore, and I don't really like that. Like that really changes the vibe. But like, it really doesn't do that. The beginning of the game, you're like, this game is really scary for like the first half, and then it transitions, as kind of Resident Evil 4 does, and that's kind of why I make the comparison, into just a full-on action game. Like it is no longer a horror game per se. It is, but like you definitely transition into being powerful and way more confident in combat situations, and there's definitely scares, but like they don't mess you up as much as they used to. You've kind of gotten used to the tricks of the trade per se, and while there's still some version to that as you go, like it's mostly like an action game at that point. But Cam was like, I don't know, like it just kind of sounds awkward if he's silent. And I think like when I first played that game, it honestly just made it creepier. Like Isaac being completely silent, it was, I think, one, it was kind of a self-insert. It was clearly meant to be that. And two is it was almost just kind of creepy. Like all this crazy stuff is going on around Isaac, and all these people are telling him like, Isaac, you need to go do this stuff. Like there's this freaking giant monster in this hallway. Like go out and shoot it, dude. Just do it. And Isaac he'd just silently go out and do it. And as a horror game, I thought that was honestly like a little off-putting, a little kind of creepy. And I was like, okay, like I kind of get it. But like playing it with the voice protagonist, I actually kind of prefer that now. The original is definitely still fine, but like I think it's definitely an improvement to have him talk, and the way that they handled it as well. He definitely does get more confident in the second half of the game, but it's nothing that like you as a player feel more confident too. So it's not that big of a deal. So moving back into the gameplay itself, this game is a very big, heavy gameplay game. I agree with a lot of what Cam said when he initially said that, his takes on the game initially. One of his big statements that resonated with me is like, this is a gameplay game, and it is. You're not really here for the story and the characters. You're definitely here for the gameplay, and in this instance, the gameplay is really, really good. It's definitely a different experience for me though, because in the original game, I only played with one gun. So in the first game, there's actually a trophy for it in this game as well, but you have a trophy for using only the plasma pistol for the entire game, not using a single other weapon. And the game gives you several weapons, but as long as you never use them, you get the trophy. And I was like, I want to maximize my trophy percentage, so I'm just going to play the game with a plasma pistol. And yeah, you can totally do that, and it definitely, like, I kind of appreciated the enforced challenge of that, even though the plasma pistol was honestly pretty powerful and ended up like making the game, honestly, I feel like, I'm not going to say easier, but different for the initial playthrough. When you fully upgrade it, it definitely feels pretty freaking powerful when that's all you're putting your nodes into, your upgrade nodes. But in this playthrough, I got to use all the weapons, and it really shows off the inventive and fun nature of a lot of these guns. Like the developers love to show off like, oh well, Isaac is an engineer, so he's not really a fighter. So like all of these guns are like very like kind of based around an idea of engineering. So like one of them's like a welding tool that's like basically a flamethrower. One of them's a ripper, which is basically a saw blade. One of them's a plasma pistol, which is supposed to be like something that he welds, or cuts through pipe or something like that. And, like it's obviously your pistol. And, I really love that kind of creative fun that they had with it. And it leads to some of the weapons being pretty cool and pretty, inventive. I will say that like I definitely gravitated towards some of the weapons, and like just kind of stuck with them. Once I got the trophies for killing like 30 enemies with each gun, I basically just took the ones that I liked the most and just stuck with them. The Ripper I ended up loving, but a lot of that has to do with the game's resource management system. So I always find it really fun in these resource management games to kind of analyze and kind of critique how their resources are being divvied out. So like what makes a resource management game truly kind of stressful and scary is the fact that obviously you can only take so many hits before you die because you don't have regenerating health, but part of that is having limited like ammo, like every shot counts and every hit counts because you only have so many health packs. So like, but the game has to kind of, you know, make that balance work where the player isn't always has nothing to work with. So like they're not able to shoot anything and they're always dying. And, you know, like they don't want to make it so that the player has too much stuff because then, well, you know, like you're not stressed at all because you're like, well, I have infinite ammo and I have unlimited health because I have 15 health packs in my inventory. So there are different development strategies to try and deal with that. In Dead Space Remake, I was initially trying to hoard all of my resources because I was like, oh, for a rainy day, I want to use, you know, I want to have all my health packs just in case I go into a boss fight or something like that and I don't have any health packs. Like I want to have those health packs. And essentially what ended up happening was I spent like the first quarter of the game with like one hit of health. Like if anything touched me, I would die because like I was refusing to use ammo or I was refusing to use healing items. And then eventually I started using them and the game just started forcing health items down my throat. And I was just like, oh, okay. So I figured out pretty quickly, well, about a quarter of the way through the game, that like the game basically just gives you what you're low on. Like if you have a healing item and you can use it, if you're confident you're not about to go into some big freaking boss fight that's about to take your entire health bar away, you should 100% just use it. Just use your health items because the game will say, oh, you have no health items in your inventory? We should make those spawn right now for you because you need them. So like I ended up just being very, you know, laissez-faire with my inventory. And then for ammo, it became very frustrating because it was random what you would get for ammo. So there would be times when like I wanted to use the plasma pistol more, but there would be times in the game where the game would be like, nope, you can't do that. We're just going to give you a bunch of Ripper ammo, and the Ripper is super ammo efficient. So like they were just like, we're just going to give you a bunch of Ripper ammo and live with that. And I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm not going to use the plasma pistol because I have no ammo for it, and the game is just absolutely against giving me any ammo for it. So I ended up being very confident with the Ripper by the end of the game because that's just where the game kind of gave me all of my freaking ammo. The game is still super tense. I was on the edge of my seat for the first like half, third, something like that of the game. Basically where the game was trying to be horror. And you know, like even when I became more confident, the game still did a really good job of like putting me in situations where I was like, oh frick, you know, like, oh crap, like now I have to deal with this. Like, how am I going to deal with this? Like, this is another insurmountable task that the game has given me. Or like, oh, something went wrong again. Like, how am I going to recover from that? And it's always just a really fun situation to be in. And you know, like it just makes you feel like you're really overcoming all the odds. Like every odd is put against you, and you know, you're really overcoming that. So I think the last thing I really want to address here is the elephant in the room of like the game is the sequel for this remake is no longer in development. I think the ending is fairly self-contained. There is technically a teaser to the second game, but like even as a fan of the game, I'm like, nah, that is totally like self-contained. Like it doesn't have to. It's not that big of a cliffhanger. So I don't necessarily think it's like that big of a downer. And then at the end of the day, like this was the high point of the franchise. Like, let's be real. Like 2 and 3 were both fine, I guess. They were good, but like they weren't great. Like Dead Space 1 is really the only great Dead Space game. And we didn't need, unless they were really going to go back and be like, we're completely gutting this and trying to make it something like way better than it was initially. I just can't foresee the Dead Space 2 being a better game than this. And, you know, apparently this just didn't sell well, which is, I think, like really what it comes down to is being very disappointing. Is like this game didn't sell well, and it's so good. I have to echo a lot of what Cam said, and like this is a very accessible horror game. I think, like this is something that a hardcore horror fan can play and be satisfied with, or a newcomer to the genre can play and be like, this can be, I mean, and I was a newcomer to the genre and like I fell in love with it. So it's very accessible in a lot of different ways. You have a lot of player freedom. Kinesis is massive. You have a slow-mo ability. You have infinite access to kinesis, and like you can just move stuff around the environment however you want. It's just fun. It's just fun. And I think to really top things off, I'm going to go back through and I'm going to address some of the things that Cam said in his initial kind of impressions, or final impressions, I guess. He beat the game. So just to make sure we have a quote-unquote conversation that happened in some way, shape, or form. I've already addressed a lot of them, but he said the story is okay. His main bullet points were the story is okay, not great. I agree with that. I think we both agreed. Like, it just does what it needs to. I did have a bone to pick with this. He said that guns were not balanced enough and were too focused. So, in other words, you can only use a certain gun in like a certain situation. And I think he's not wrong, actually. I don't think he's wrong, but I do think that a lot of games' weapons are kind of structured in that way. Right? Like a shotgun is meant to be close range. A sniper rifle is meant to be, long distance. Assault rifle is supposed to be mid range. Like every weapon technically has a purpose. I think Dead Space has a lot more of that focus in terms of like Ripper I could only use up close, for more or less. Plasma pistol was kind of your all around. Assault rifle, you had a pulse rifle. Flamethrower was obviously a flamethrower. But certain enemies and certain types, it made sense to use specific weapons. So I understand his complaint there. And I think in an economy like this, where you have these resources for guns that you may never use, or you have nodes that you have to put in these weapons, and you're like, well, I put 15 nodes into that one gun and I'm never using it. I thought it would be cool, but like now I'm never freaking using it. I understand where the frustration with that would be, but for me, I just took it as I'm just going to use my favorite guns. Like the guns in this game are all still very fun, and I'll just use my favorite guns, and if a situation arises in which I want to use it, I will. And, like that's, I just felt like it wasn't that big of a deal, but I totally understand his complaint there. And then he said something during his impressions. He put a pretty big emphasis on this, and I was like, I don't know. He sounds like he's kind of over exaggerating this. Like maybe he's just bad at video games or something. I don't know. But like, he was like, there was a point where there was a tentacle that grabbed me, and like the checkpoint was really bad, and like it could only be done with the plasma cutter. And I was like, I don't know, man. Maybe you just weren't aiming well enough. Like, I don't know. Like, I haven't played that section yet in the remake, but like, I don't know. Like that seems like you could probably shoot it with any gun and it would probably kill it. And like, no, like the literal exact same thing happened to me. Like I died like 4 times trying to kill this frickin' tentacle, and it happens multiple times throughout the game. And like each time I died, I was using some gun other than the plasma pistol or the plasma cutter. And I was like, oh my gosh. Every time I died, it would send me back like 5 minutes, and I'd have to frickin' get all my resources again and walk down a frickin' hallway and, like go through this cutscene again in which he grabs me, and then like hope I could frickin' shoot it. And like when I moved to the plasma cutter, it took me like 4 shots and I was like done. But like I tried to use it like the plasma rifle, and I was like unsuccessful every single time. Like I was like, this gun should be more powerful. Why is the plasma cutter doing it, but this isn't? And yeah, like the checkpoints for that were pretty bad. Like I genuinely understand his frustration there after playing those sections. Yeah, I have no idea how they dropped the ball on that so bad. I guess they just expected nobody to have problems with it. Otherwise there wouldn't be a bad checkpoint there. But yeah, I mean, like, and he also said the intro is great, and I think that the intro is fantastic. I think this is honestly one of the more memorable like intros to any horror game I think I've ever played. Really, in some games in general, just one of the best intros. Cut off their limbs is, I believe, like plastered on in the wall in blood when you pick up the plasma cutter for the first time, and it's so memorable. It's so memorable to see that. The initial like first contact and like running away from the necromorphs when you first meet them, and like them trying to get in the elevator, and it's a great freaking sequence, and it still is to this day. Excuse me, to this day. And I mean, yeah, this is still my favorite horror game of all time. And really glad I got to go back and play it again. And in all honesty, it's probably one of the best games ever. Probably, coming to me on the right day. It's definitely not like top 10, top 20, top 50, but like, I still think if you're in the top freaking 100 or 200, you're still one of the best great games of all time. So that's Dead Space Remake. Really glad I got to go back to that. The next game, I may not have as glowing opinions on. It is another spooky game called The Dark Pictures Anthology, The Devil in Me. So this is another supermassive game. I actually spoke about House of Ashes just a few podcasts ago, really. I really love these narrative-based games, and Supermassive tends to make a lot of them. I really love Until Dawn, and they really just have not had a huge stride in these Dark Pictures Anthology. A lot of people are like, I don't even know if this studio can make these games anymore. Like The Quarry was another game that they made, and people were like, it's fine, I guess, and it's not that great. They recently remade Until Dawn, and nobody really gives a frick about it. So maybe this was just like a one-trick pony that just kind of came and went at the right time. I don't know, but I still think Until Dawn is fun, for sure. And I still love the idea of these narrative choice-based games where like your decisions matter. This is the final game of the season. So as we may have known at Summer Games Fest, I believe, if I remember correctly, one of Keeley's presentations, they announced the start of season 2, which will be a horror game set in space, which is definitely different. It's definitely a more interesting setting, and I'm looking forward to that. But I mean, we just talked about Dead Space. It's very good. So, that's in space. But this is... I was really looking forward to this one. I don't know why, because it is a 69 on Metacritic, which is not great at all. But it was kind of advertised as like a Saw-like horror experience. And that really, perked my ears up, because I'm like, a narrative choice-based game when you're like playing a Saw game, like that's kind of, like if you haven't seen Saw, it's like, basically here's a situation in which only one of these two people can survive. Like one of you has to kill the other in order to survive. That's kind of, like, would you like to play a game? That's a horrible impression, but it is what it is. This is the Halloween episode. It can be scary bad. But I was like, in a narrative choice-based game, that's a big deal. That's like perfect. Like how did we not get here before? And admittedly, that's kind of toyed with in Until Dawn. There's kind of like a little segment in that game that kind of goes in and out pretty quick. But this was kind of advertised as like, that's all this game is. And I'm just like, oh frick, like this is gonna be amazing. Like I can't wait to make these decisions. And this is not really that. Does it have that? Yes. But there's only like two. There's only like two of those situations. So this is actually probably more of an interesting game if you're a history buff, or you listen to a lot of serial killer podcasts. I did not know who this serial killer was, actually, but this is based on the serial killer H.H. Holmes. So this entire thing is heavily tied into H.H. Holmes. Literally, the murderer of this game is like cosplaying as H.H. Holmes, and like H.H. Holmes is in the very beginning of the game. Like the game opens with H.H. Holmes like murdering people, and like there's a documentary that you can unlock if you find enough special secrets in the game. You can unlock a documentary, like a straight up like History Channel style documentary about H.H. Holmes. And like I went through it after playing the game because I was just like, oh, surely I didn't realize it was based on a real murderer. And I was like, oh no, okay, I see what they're trying to do with this. Like clearly everything in this game is attempting to be some kind of H.H. Holmes reference in some way, shape, or form. So this left a lot to expect initially, but there's only ever two like situations like this, and unfortunately, the rest of the any decisions, life or death, are pretty much just like run and hide scenarios. Like the murderer is on top of you. What are you gonna do? You're gonna go left or right? Like you're gonna go under the bed. You're gonna go over the bed. Like what are you gonna do? And are you gonna attack? Are you gonna run away? Like those are the decisions you will be facing for the vast majority of the game, and that is a massive letdown for sure. And it makes sense, right? Because like if you think about it for more than 5 seconds, like these games are designed so that everybody has a potential to survive. Every one of Supermassive's games has like a trophy at the end of it for you to have everybody survive. You made all the right decisions. And so like if you were able to do that with this game, I mean, that wouldn't necessarily make it a death game, would it? Like it wouldn't make it a very Saw-like death game if that was the case, because I mean, like, somebody would have to die. So, like, in other words, every single one of these quote-unquote Saw-like games, like these death games, you have an alternative way out, some of which do not make any sense and are just total crapshoots, and the game basically not knowing how to deal with the situation of, like, giving you a life or death situation where you have to choose somebody, and then, like, also giving you a possibility of saving both of them. It's honestly kind of ridiculous, and kind of where I kind of look at this game and I'm like, okay, I love these narrative-based games, but it's really difficult for me to sit here and be like, yeah, these work based on the goals you're trying to accomplish. It really ends up being super unsatisfying in a lot of ways. And while this, like, I'm just going to start off and say the positives here. I think that this game has some genuinely scary moments. I don't even think I would say that about any of the other Dark Picture Anthology games. House of Ashes was just like a straight up action movie. Like it wasn't, I don't even consider that horror. All the other Dark Pictures Anthology games I played have not been that scary. This game, there were actually a couple of moments where I was like, oh, this is genuinely kind of freaking me out. Or this is a little bit freaking like, this is a little ooky spooky. I don't know what to think about this. And, like that's probably like where it begins and ends in terms of compliments. Everything else is, I mean, like, I think, there's a lot going on here, right? So I talked about it on the last time I talked about this when I talked about House of Ashes, but this was, like Bandai Namco signed a contract. We were just literally talking about Bandai Namco, how they put out a bunch of garbage games. I don't want to consider these games garbage because I really do want them to be good, but like it's impossible for me to ignore the reviews for these games. None of them broke like 71. Like they are all like super low 70s or high 60s, which is really, really bad. Like very, very mediocre. So Bandai Namco signed a contract with Supermassive to make 5 of them. And this was the 5th. So it was, to me, very obvious that this game was just like trying to be pushed out. Like Bandai Namco, these games were not selling. It was probably Bandai Namco being like, we just need you to get the frick done with this. And Supermassive being like, we just need to get the frick done with this, so we're not tied to this anymore. And this game has a noticeable lack of polish comparative to the other games in the series, or in the, I don't know, anthology. Like, and I'm talking like some real, like, I mean, there's some real noticeable lack of polish here. We're talking some weird pop-ins, animations not working. Like, I mean, I can think of a lot of like little things that definitely added up. Like at some point people would be drinking wine and like the wine would just like stay at an angle, in the glass because somebody had drinking it, so it had moved. Like some of the sky boxes weren't like filled in correctly. The classic, like sometimes you'd be opening a door and it would zoom in and you'd see like inside the character's head, so you'd see their teeth and their freaking eyeballs and stuff. Like that kind of lack of polish. That's what we're talking about. And that's all over the place. I'm not gonna say it like killed the game, but it was just like so noticeable to me that I was like, oh, they were just trying to get this freaking out the door. And that and like, there was a lot of there were some mechanics added in this one. Specifically, like they give you items in this game. So like you're always pretty much holding some kind of illumination device, like a match or, like a lighter or a flashlight or something like that. And, you can hold keys and you can hold other items that you can utilize throughout the game. And there's also like parkour mechanics that I don't believe were in previous games. You can crawl under things and climb over things and stuff like that. And I was just like, bro, these didn't need to be here at all. Like, it's so ridiculous that these are even here because, I mean, all of these items are never really utilized. All of these mechanics in parkour are just there to add flavor to getting from point A to point B, and it's not very good flavor. If anything, it just slows the player down and makes it so that I can't get to the next part of the story faster. It just feels like nothing here really worked in terms of trying to get it to work the way they wanted it to. I'll say it was a little bit more evenly paced. Okay, so I know like on the last one I talked about House of Ashes, basically House of Ashes had 2 to 3 hours of like build up, and then it was like a nonstop roller coaster ride for like the rest of the game. In this, I'd say it was pretty even keel from beginning to end. Like I never felt like I was like super bored, but like I also never felt like anything super interesting was happening either. And that's because, let's be real, like this concept is, while it is interesting when I know the historical context, like it just doesn't lead to very interesting situations in this choice-based death game, because you are dealing with one serial killer who has no supernatural abilities, and once all the cards are on the table, this game just kind of crumbles, like in terms of what's going on and how interesting it is. So like in House of Ashes, there's like a third act twist that makes like I was just like, whoa, okay, we're going here. Like this is kind of interesting. In The Devil in Me, this really never goes anywhere. Like it's just like there is a serial killer, he's trying to kill you, and eventually in the third act, you like get out of the creepy mansion and you start running around the forest, and it just becomes a very bog standard. Like this is nothing. Nothing really interesting is happening here. Like you're just kind of running around and the serial killer's kind of running after you, and it's very boring. It just seems very just drawn out. In all honesty, the whole final act didn't need to be there. It didn't add anything. It didn't do anything. It wasn't interesting in any way. And I think this game would have benefited significantly if the last like 2 to 3 hours of it were completely cut. Which is like, it's not even that long of a game in the first place. It's only like 6, 7, maybe 8 hours if you're really trying to stretch it. If you're really taking your time going, and I like to think I explored the environments pretty thoroughly. So, like it's not, like that really killed the experience for me, was that last third, that last stretch. And that brings me back to like the choices, right? So I ended up looking for a walkthrough because I did lose one character towards the end. So in House of Ashes, I lost a character too, but it was towards the beginning of the game, actually. I read the midway point, but like when I started having to make decisions, I made a bad decision. And I lost a character, and I was like, cool, like that's what makes these games cool, right? Is like there is that tension of losing a player or losing a character and having the entire game have to like have a ripple effect because of that. That character's not there anymore, and they were a key instrumental player in the story, right? So in this instance, I lost a character pretty much at the very end of the game. Like probably the last 15, 30 minutes of the game, I lost a character, And I went back through and I was like, dang, man, like, what should I have done? I looked at the walkthrough. I looked up a walkthrough to see, like, what the frick happened here? Why did this happen? And, like, yeah, I felt like it was kind of BS. Like, I felt like it was kind of BS that character died. And, in House of Ashes, they were like, when my character died, I lost one character, and it was like, are you freaking sure? Are you freaking sure you want to do that? Like, it asked me like 3 times, like, yes, I want to do that. And then I ended up dying. But, it felt like it was telegraphed enough to me that it was like, okay, sure, that makes sense. But like in this game, I lost a character and I was like, no, that's kind of bullcrap. And then I looked back at all of the choices. And I looked back at a lot of them that were life and death situations, and I was like, oh man, there's a lot in here that really could just be bullcrap that you just never would have known. Like that's how you were supposed to handle that situation, or that's why that was the correct decision. A lot of it's just complete bullcrap. And I'm just like, oh, I don't know if this is like very well structured to do what the game is trying to do. So like there's 2 ways that your choices can really be telegraphed in a game like this. And one is, like you do not telegraph the decisions, like I was saying, and like the player doesn't notice, they make a bad decision and they're harshly punished. Like that's a massive punishment to take away an entire character that could tell just like a massive portion of the story. And the other one is you telegraph the decisions well, but the player then like makes the wrong decisions because they didn't understand what you were telegraphing for some reason or another, and now they just feel stupid and they have to deal with this really harsh punishment for the rest of the game. So like either way, you're really kind of screwing the player, and I get that that's part of it, but like, and they do try to mitigate that because essentially any character that has the possibility of like having a very significant high death rate, they're like basically take them out of the game. They're like not even there anymore. Like they're never in an important sequence. They never do anything important again for the rest of the game. And like I understand why they do that, but like there was a character that clearly like the game thought I had killed or I was going to kill, or had a high chance of dying, and then like he just never does anything for the rest of the game. Like every other sequence that he's in, it like he's just not very important, or he's just walking down a hallway by himself and not interacting with any characters, because if he was interacting with characters, that would have been more time and effort they needed to put into that character that possibly could be dead, and the player wouldn't even be interacting or seeing those scenes anyway. So like I don't know, it's a very delicate balance, right? These games require a very delicate balance, and it requires, in order to really make what the ultimate end game of these, like the goal of these games is to give you a fully like real story that you are interacting with and you are like doing cool stuff in. In this instance, the cool stuff you're doing is choosing whether people live or die, right? You're not making some like Dragon Age-esque choice or Mass Effect-esque choice where you're like, well, this species lives and dies in this universe. Like that's not like with long-reaching consequences. Like that's not what you really are dealing with here. You're dealing with this one isolated character either lives or dies in this isolated story. Like so it's a lot lower stakes in that sense, but like it still is a balance of trying to treat the player with some respect around those decisions. And I think that these games falter with it in a way. I have not played one of these games yet and been fully satisfied with how my story turned out, because there was always some death that I thought was cheap, or like something that I did that was stupid that ended up being a really harsh consequence, and I missed out on half the game, like because there was that character wasn't there. So like I don't know, I want to love these games. I want to go back to that first time I played Telltale's The Walking Dead and I interacted with a narrative choice-based game and I thought my decisions mattered, and I want I want that feeling again. And I don't think these games give you that, unfortunately. Here's the thing. At the end of the day, I don't hate it. I think it's I think these games always bring up an interesting conversation with these, like, how do you make a game like this? I want there to be a game like this. How do you make it? And I think it's very difficult, and it's going to be like a quadruple, maybe even quintuple A game that makes it like a game that I'm looking for, where you have a real interactable universe that feels real, and like your decisions have consequences that make sense and are impactful and fun. Like I think it's like almost impossible. Like you're basically just making a real frickin' world at that point, a virtual world. So, that being said, this game is still spooky, and I did reference that as a plus. There are some spooky elements to this game. It satisfied my Halloween kick. I got it for free, by the way. I don't think I mentioned that at the beginning. This was a PlayStation Extra game, which is why I decided to play it. It just like dropped on October 15th or something like that, and I was just like, yeah, sure. I don't have that much time to play games right now, but that one's pretty short, and it's a Halloween game. So, and I'll make the podcast a spooky podcast. But like, this is something that definitely satisfied that itch. But I think really, and like at the end of the day, I think this is just as good as the rest of the Dark Pictures Anthology games. The problem is they are all like a hard 7. Like every single one of these games is like a hard 7, and like I don't know if that's good enough for most people. And I think like this was probably one of my least favorite out of all of these, simply because the last like third of this one sucks. Like it's just not good. Like nothing interesting happens, and the death game aspect just was not fully realized here. And it makes me hope that Dark Pictures Anthology Season 2 is something that they are really putting a lot of time and effort into. But maybe they're doing it from a rebuilt engine and really trying to overhaul it. And I genuinely just don't think that's going to happen. Like, I think the Quarry would have been that, or at least the Quarry would have been noticeably better. And while I still did really enjoy the Quarry, and I played the Quarry as well, like, I still think it was like not that great. Like it was like there were still problems with it, I still enjoyed it. I think it's one of their better games comparative. It's definitely better than any of the Dark Picture Anthology games, but like, it's like a 7.5. These are all like 7s. It's like a 7.5, maybe an 8 if you're really being generous. So like it's really hard for me to sit here and be like, yo, yeah, Supermassive is a good developer, and they have the potential. They have the potential to do greatness still. Another Until Dawn, it's just around the corner. Like, I don't know. I just don't see it. It's unfortunate. I don't think I'd be looking forward to any of their games moving forward. I think I'd be happy to play any of them if they were free. I think, and that fortunately they all have been free. Until Dawn is the only one that I've bought, and then all the rest have been free at some point or another on some surface that I have. So, I think that they are just a standard flat 7 game. And if you are looking for this kind of a game, then you will probably be okay with it. I don't foresee anybody loving this game. I can see some people maybe not liking it. But I think most people are probably going to come away just like me and be like, I probably could have done something better with my time, which is like, it's so sad. Again, like I just am so disappointed to say that. I wish I didn't have to, but that's it. That's the spookiness. All the spookiness has left my body and risen up as a spirit would, per se. And yeah, I think that was a pretty good Halloween episode. We made that pretty solid Halloween-y. I hope I spooked you. I hope you get spooked. I hope you're not listening to this after Halloween, because wouldn't that be awkward? I forgot to do it at the top of the episode, which is where it really should be. But why don't you rate us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts? We're there. Leave us a review. Tell me how spooky I am. And why not give us a question in the description below. That's right. I do that. Not only are there timestamps for your convenience, for your listening pleasure, but there's also an email address. It's pluginplaypodcast1@gmail.com. You can send me his email. I'll read that question. I don't care what it is. It can be about anything. I'll read it. I'm desperate. And I will answer it on the podcast. You can be a part of the show. How does that sound? That sounds pretty cool to me. Maybe it's even scary. Scary good. So anyway, happy Halloween, everyone. As a reminder, I will be off next cycle, so it will be 4 weeks till you hear from me again, and I will be exhausted, hopefully still alive after the brutal trip I have planned in glorious Nippon. Maybe I'll come back with like a rare vintage Japanese video game. I actually saw some people recently talk about they went to Japan and they just like bought like Metaphor ReFantazio and like Silent Hill Remake because they were like, bro, the yen is so cheap right now. I save like $20 just buying brand new games in Japan and bringing them back. And I'm like, and they play on a PlayStation 5 in America. They're not region locked. And I'm like, oh, maybe that's just like a life hack. You know, just fly to Japan and buy all your games. I don't know. I'm thinking about it. The wife probably will not be happy about it though. Suitcase room is limited, very sparse. But anyway, I appreciate you as always, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for listening to the Plug and Play podcast. Have a good day. Play some video games for me. I love it when you play video games. I love it when anybody plays video games. And have a happy Halloween.